Hi guys, Kim here at Olive City Homestead, and it is another beautiful day in January. I'm glad you're here to join me. I'm going to take you out in the garden, but not in the veggie garden, in the flower garden. So at this time of year, not all of my plants in my flower garden look so lovely, but I have to have a vision for the future, kind of like with life in general. And there is always hope. I've been through enough springs, and I'm sure you have too, that you know how great it is when those months roll around with more sun and more warmth and the plants come alive again with color. And so I have to hold on to that sometimes in the middle of winter, and I'm doing that right now. But the jobs that come with winter, as with the fruit trees, same with flowers, you have to do pruning. And pruning is not always the easiest thing to do, at least not for me, and we'll talk about that in this video. Also throughout this video, I'm going to be sharing with you some of the gorgeous photos that I've taken to show you what these flowers in their prime state of beauty look like. So come with me and let's take a look at some flowers. And here we have some gorgeous, bright, cheerful orange gazanias blooming strong in January. And in the shade even, they are overshadowed by this huge, overgrown lantana. Now lantana has beautiful orange and yellow blossoms, or my variety does. They actually come in varieties that have pink and white, but mine is bright red, orange, and yellow. And it's perennial here in Zone 9B. But in the winter, this is what it looks like when it finally gets to be about January. I think mine bloomed through the end of November this year. And I remember when I moved here and bought these and planted these, my dad, who's a former landscaper and nursery owner, told me he didn't think that they would be perennial. And they do look, if you get up close, pretty dead. Actually, if you get really close though, see that? That is fresh green growth. And so they do come back every year. And they grow like crazy here. The problem is that these leaves don't come off by themselves. They're supposed to be deciduous, but they don't. I've experimented for several years and they just don't. And in fact, they're very tedious to take off. I thought that eventually they would fall off in the spring, that the new growth would push out the old growth, but it does not for me. So I have to actually take all these leaves off. So what I've decided is I'm going to prune this back heavily, which I do anyway, but I'm going to do that before I go to the effort of taking leaves off because, you know, that's logical. And once I do prune it back, we'll be able to see what's in the middle here, which has come up recently. All this green growth. This is from freesia bulbs, which will bloom very early in the spring. They're my earliest bloomer. And that is really nice to have before the new growth comes out on the lantana. Big spot of color amongst the bare branches. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. So here's how the lantana bush looks now that it's been all pruned. Quite bare, but those branches will soon be alive with leaves and blossoms, just in maybe 2 months or less. Meanwhile, the freesia leaves are green and gorgeous and will soon be sporting beautiful red-orange blossoms themselves, which I will show you now. I have a lot of freesia, but these are my favorites. And here is what the lantana will look like very soon. So here I have another overgrown lantana that I need to prune back. I thought I would mention that back when I used to be afraid to prune aggressively or even at all on some of my plants, the reason was not only that I sometimes wasn't sure if I should do it, if it was good for the plant, because sometimes I knew, like with this lantana, that it is a good thing to do. However, I also held back at times because there would be blooms coming up on the plants that I didn't have the heart to cut back. And I would convince myself that if it was blooming now in January, then it would do even better in the spring and I should leave it. I have since learned that that's not true. So I try to compromise, and I enjoy the blooms far into winter as I feel it's, well, wise. and then I cut it back so I can have a very large and luscious bloom in the spring. So I said I prune them. I've learned to do that, but I did not say it's always easy. When I see beautiful blossoms like this and new growth coming up like that, it is difficult to cut it off, but I know that if I do, I'll get so much more in a few months. I don't have to prune my little roses though, and I don't have to prune back the gazanias. They're good all year. And also I want to show you something else I found blooming. Here is an African daisy, otherwise known as osteosperma. And I have many colors. One of my favorite colors is burgundy, but this white with the violet blue center is beautiful. I love it in the spring when I'll get dozens and dozens of these blossoms on one plant. But it does have a special beauty here in January all by itself, doesn't it? Now here is another lantana bush that I've just pruned, and you might think, wait a minute, there's leaves all over it. Yes, there are. There are. Over on this side are more bare branches, but there are a lot of leaves left, and I'll probably come out and take them all off very soon. Yeah, I will. Sometimes I have to do these things in stages. It really makes it a lot easier for me. Here is something else I do sometimes. It helps me to go ahead and get over that hesitation I have to prune sometimes because I'm sentimental. When I see blossoms like this, I will prune them, but I will then take off the leaves except for a few at the very top with the blossoms, and I will try to root them in water and then grow new plants from them. And with lantana, I have had great success with this. And actually, you know what? I've stuck in some of the thicker branches I pruned directly into soil and keeping it watered in the winter, which if I put it out where the rain can hit it, granted we don't get much rain, but it seems to have been enough, I have had great success growing lantana directly rooting into the soil as well as in water. So I don't know if that's just in my zone, but that's the kind of gardening I do. Because I didn't know anything about flower gardening and just assumed I was really bad at it because I'd always killed houseplants, it kind of freed me up when I began gardening here 5-6 years ago. It freed me in the sense that I didn't have any expectations. I wasn't upset when things didn't work. I was just excited when they did. And so that's what I'm going to do with this lantana that I pruned off. And I encourage you to experiment as well. There's really nothing to lose and a whole lot to gain. Here are a few of those lantana cuttings, and whether they root or not, I have a really pretty, to me anyway, vase of flowers and a little cup of small ones too. This is the kind of thing that I enjoy, and if it happens to lead to more plants in the future that I can plant out in the garden, well, that's great too. Now here is some purple fountain grass, which does not look very purple, does it? There's a few strands, a few leaves of maroon color in there, but mostly it's golden, and that's what it does in the fall and late fall and early winter, so it's time to cut it back. Now I have another one of these just over here, and I just did cut it back, as you can see, all the way down. It's about 4 inches tall, and that's just gonna shoot up like crazy soon, probably in about, well, less than a month probably it'll start. And all around it I planted various bulbs, which I did a video on a week or two ago. I'll link that up above and down in the description if you want to watch that fun video of planting bulbs and having allergic reactions and stuff like that. And I actually have seen some of the bulbs coming up. So here is another pot next to the purple fountain grass that I planted bulbs in, and you can see green popping up. And here in my container with the martini tree, little miniature one, I've got some bulbs popping up in there too. I popped in a few in there because I had a few extra. So yes, now I'm going to prune this back. I made the mistake one year of not pruning it, and that really didn't go over that well. It did send up new growth. It tried to. It was all intermingled with the old stuff, and it just didn't look that great. And so the next year I cut it way back, and it did fabulous. These two plants, and I have 6 or 7, maybe 8 more around a large tree on the other side of the yard. They are, oh goodness, they're like 5, 6 years old, and they just keep plugging away, looking great every spring. There, it's done. Looks kind of bare and naked, doesn't it? And that's why I didn't do it the very first year I had these. I was scared to. I knew I probably should, but I had never gardened before when I first started flower gardening about 5 or 6 years ago, and I started very slowly, and I basically kept going with perennials that did great on their own and thrived here, and then with the rest I just learned as I went, and that's been great for me. And I believe anyone can therefore do this as long as they're willing to experiment and research. I researched, and once I had enough confirmation that I should do something a certain way, or at least try it, I would, and lo and behold, it would work. Now here we go, all this pruning. What am I going to do with it? I'm probably going to use it for mulch. I mean, I can compost it too, but it makes a nice mulch, this grass. Well, the purple fountain grass is in the shade now, but I thought I'd show you what it looks like in the spring. I have it planted in several places around the property, and I do love its burgundy leaves, and I just think they're lovely. I think you might agree. Now you notice in the background I have quite a large bush, all those green leaves spiking upward. That is an African iris, and it's one of the few flowering plants that was here when I moved here 8 years ago. And I am ashamed to tell you, I have never dug it up and divided it. It probably was half that size when I got here, and every year I say, I'm going to dig that up and divide it. And every year I look at it and I'm overwhelmed. But this is the year, folks. I am going to divide that over the next week, and I will share with you when I do. Here's a picture of what it looks like when it's in bloom. This area is full of another kind of plant. Maybe you can guess what it is as you get closer and see the leaves. But right now, what you notice probably is all these dead leaves and a bunch of dead stems. I did prune back the majority of these plants in this area about 2 months ago, I'd say. They are one of the plants that blooms the earliest in the spring, and they're done by about midsummer. But they stay green. The blooms are done, but they stay green for many months after that. So yeah, I did prune back most of them, but I also left some that still look pretty good. And now I need to come out and prune them too. These stems are about 12 to even 18, 20 inches tall. And they are right up against one of my geraniums that's looking really nice right now. Nice and pretty lime green. And so what is this plant? Well, looking down here, you can see some new growth coming up. And in just a couple of weeks, this will be a sea of green. Green leaves everywhere. But a week or two after that, and all that will be here will be a foamy pink ocean. And what is really fascinating and exciting to me is that this plant covers about 20 feet wide and 12 feet long area, but yet was planted with just 2 plants, one in each corner, and it just takes off. And again, you can't imagine how this will look. Oh wait, yes you can, because I will show you a picture right now. So this is Mexican poppies, and I just love it. And look at it at night. The glow is almost iridescent. It's amazing what nature can do. And I was so pleased when this plant, the little tiny 4-inch plant that I planted, one in each corner, when they grew so huge and so glorious, I was shocked, amazed, thrilled, all of those things. And even more so when the next year they had spread tremendously through self-seeding. They've come back now for 3 years in a row, and I've started to pull some up by their roots and plant them in other places that I'd like them to grow. I would not suggest, if you live in a warm climate like I do, planting them anywhere you don't want them to spread, because this entire area is covered with them in the spring. Now here is one of my flowers that is in bloom. This is a Euryops daisy bush. I have several around the property, and I just love them because they're so cheerful. They're so encouraging to me because they bloom pretty much year round in zones 8 to 11. Since I'm in 9B, they love it here. So thank you for joining me today, folks. I hope you enjoyed our time in the garden with the pruning and the flowers. And I would love to know, if you write it in the comments below, what are your favorite flowers that come up first in the spring? And what are your perennials that you keep going all year round? And right now you're still envisioning what it's going to look like at your place in just another month or two. Or, hey, maybe you're around the world and it's not winter where you are, it's summer. Well, tell me what you've got going on in your garden right now. If you haven't yet subscribed to my channel, I would love it if you would do so now. If you enjoy this kind of content, flowers and veggies year-round, and also just simple living encouragement. We all need it, folks. Me and others who struggle with seasonal affective disorder in the winter, most of all perhaps. No, also those who just are struggling with any kind of disappointment right now or extra challenging situation. We all need some encouragement. And I have to say, what I have found over the last 10, 15 years, but especially so in the last 5 years as I've really focused on it, is that nature is what encourages me the most by far. And it doesn't have to be flowers like these daisies here. It doesn't have to be digging in your veggie garden. It can be hiking in the mountains or spending a peaceful afternoon on your lawn or camping by a river, any number of things. But getting outside and being exposed to the sunshine, being exposed to the different elements of nature, even snow for some people, is enough to really just change your whole perspective on life and your mindset for the day ahead. So I encourage you to get outside more, as I encourage myself to do the same, because nature really is the ultimate, most rewarding form of self-care. And don't forget, you really can create and live the life that you want, whatever that might be for you. And don't let anyone tell you otherwise. See you next time, folks.